Hey everyone, and welcome! Today we're going to dig into something that affects every single one of us every single day. The shocking connection between the money in your wallet and the food on your plate. We're about to uncover how one single decision, made decades ago, might just be the real reason for our modern crises in both health and wealth. Let's jump in.
You ever ask yourself this? It's kind of the biggest puzzle of our time, isn't it? We have all this amazing technology, incredible medical advancements, and yet we seem to be getting sicker. The cost of just living, of buying decent food, feels like it's spinning out of control. It just doesn't add up. How is it just possible?
Okay, now this right here really cuts through all the noise. Of course, our incomes are higher today than in 1971. No one's arguing that. But look at what that money actually buys. Back then, with one day's wages, the average person could buy over 14 pounds of steak. Fast forward to 2022, and that number drops to less than 12. We're working harder, earning more dollars, but our power to buy real quality food has actually gone down by more than a third. So, what on earth happened? To get to the bottom of this, we're going to follow the clues. We'll start with this paradox we're living in, then go back in time to a huge shock in 1971. After that, we'll expose what our sources call fiat foods, see what they're doing to our brains, and finally, talk about how we might be able to opt out of the whole system. So first, let's just lay out the problem clearly. The argument here is that this isn't two separate problems, a health crisis and an economic one. No, it's one big crisis, sicker bodies and weaker dollars. And yeah, this chart pretty much says it all. You've got chronic disease just climbing and climbing, you've got inflation eating away at every dollar you earn, and, no surprise, our trust in the people and institutions that are supposed to be managing all this, it's hitting rock bottom. Now, what if these aren't three different fires? What if they're all just smoke coming from one single source?
And that brings us to the main event, the big clue. We're talking about August 15th, 1971. A day that might not seem important, but our sources argue it's the day the President of the United States stood up and changed the rules of money for the entire planet. See, before 1971, the US dollar was tied to gold. There was a real physical limit on how much money could be printed. But on that night, President Nixon announced they were temporarily cutting that link. Well, temporary is still going on today. And just like that, the dollar was backed by, well, nothing physical, only by trust in the government. The world had officially entered the age of fiat money.
So you got to get your head around this term, fiat money. It's basically money that exists because the government says it does. It's not tied to anything real or scarce like gold. And that means it can be created with, as it says here, little restraint. It can be printed. This one change opened up a Pandora's box of consequences. And, weirdly enough, it started with what we eat for dinner.
All right, this is where it gets really wild. How in the world does a high-level money decision change the ingredients in your pantry? Well, this is where the story takes a fascinating and, frankly, disturbing turn.
Right around the same time our money was changing, there was a war being waged against fat. A physiologist named Ansel Keys was pushing this powerful idea that saturated fat, the stuff in meat, butter, eggs, was the big villain causing heart disease. And as you can see from this Time magazine quote, his idea was a blockbuster. It became the official story for the next 50 years.
But here is the bombshell. Get this. While the government was making policy based on this anti-fat theory, a massive, super rigorous study, one that Keys himself helped design, found the exact opposite. The study showed that when people replaced animal fats with vegetable oils, their cholesterol went down, sure, but their risk of dying went up. But did you hear about this? No, because the results were buried, hidden away from the public for 16 years. The low-fat, high-carb train had already left the station. So how did that train get so powerful? Well, that's where the new money system comes back in. With the ability to basically print money, the government could now spend unbelievable amounts to reshape how America ate. We're talking billions of dollars on programs like school lunches, all pushing these low-fat, high-carb meals that fit the official narrative. This also led to enormous farm subsidies, especially for one crop, corn. Farmers were paid to grow mountains of it. So where did all that corn go? This chart tells the story. A lot went to fuel and animal feed for sure. But look at that last slice. Almost a quarter of it was processed into things like high-fructose corn syrup, the cheap, sweet backbone of the new American diet. And this, right here, is the central idea. The new fiat economy completely changed the game. It became way more profitable to produce cheap, processed ingredients that could sit on a shelf for years than it was to raise animals for meat or grow fresh vegetables. The entire system got flooded with these new industrial products. The sources have a name for them: fiat foods. So what makes a food a fiat food? Well, they're packed with refined carbs and sugars, they're swimming in highly processed seed oils, they're what you'd call empty calories, very low in actual nutrients. And here are the two big ones. They're designed to have an insane shelf life, and they are literally engineered to make you want to eat more and more of them.
Okay, so we followed the money to the farm, and from the farm to the factory, but what happens when these fiat foods actually get inside our bodies? What is the real, biological price we're paying, especially when it comes to our brains? Well, according to the research in Genius Foods, it's a catastrophe. This kind of diet can lead to insulin resistance, which means your brain cells literally struggle to get the fuel they need. It causes chronic inflammation, which is tied to brain aging. It creates something called a leaky gut, letting bad stuff into your bloodstream. And the biggest irony of all, we're eating more calories than ever, but our brains are being starved of the actual nutrients they desperately need to function.
And I love this quote because it just brings it all home. This isn't just about avoiding some disease 50 years down the road. The food you eat today directly impacts your focus, your mood, and your memory right now. When you choose better food, you're not just investing in your future self, you're upgrading your life today.
So, if the systems for both our money and our food are deeply connected and maybe even broken, what in the world are we supposed to do about it? The last section is all about the solution our sources propose, making a conscious choice to opt out and take back control.
And the path forward really breaks down into two big moves that you make at the same time. First, you reclaim your money. You opt out of a system where your savings are constantly losing value, and you look for assets that are actually scarce, that can't just be created out of thin air. Second, you reclaim your health. You opt out of the industrial food machine and make a deliberate choice to prioritize real, whole, unprocessed foods over the fiat stuff.
And this slide just lays out the two completely different mindsets perfectly. The fiat mindset punishes you for saving, it pushes you toward convenience over quality, and it depends on these big top-down plans to solve problems. The autonomy mindset is the opposite. It's about long-term thinking, prioritizing real nutrition, and believing in the power of individual choice and personal responsibility for both your money and your health.
And that leaves us with this one last big question to think about. If it's true, if the very foundations of our money and our food are tangled together, can you ever really be healthy? Can you ever really be wealthy without first claiming your own personal autonomy from these massive systems? It's a powerful idea. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.